Before there were printing presses, libraries, documentaries, and digital archives, there were voices, strong, disciplined, unforgettable voices that carried the memories of entire civilizations. And in Africa, those voices became the heartbeat of the people. The story of Africa is not a story of silence or emptiness. It's a story of power spoken aloud, a story of knowledge passed through generations, not on paper, but through the rhythm of the human tongue. There is a strength in that kind of storytelling that the world often overlooks. Yet it is one of the greatest demonstrations of human intelligence and cultural unity that history has ever witnessed. When we speak of Africa's storytelling language, we speak of a tradition that refused to let history die, even when the world tried to erase it. Think for a moment about the power of a spoken word. A word can shape a child's identity, build a community's courage, or carry the truth of a people who refuse to be forgotten. In many African societies, the spoken word was not just a form of communication, it was a sacred responsibility. It was how fathers taught sons about their lineage, how elders guided young leaders, how women preserved wisdom about the land, the seasons, family, and human character. Long before modern historians existed, Africa had keepers of memory. These were not scholars with books in their hands. They were storytellers with fire in their voices. They lived knowing that every sentence mattered because the future depended on the survival of the past. And what makes this powerful is that they didn't record their history with ink. They recorded it with emotion, with tone, with breath. They used the vibrations of their voice to carry the truth across time. When these storytellers spoke, children listened, communities gathered, and entire villages fell silent because they knew they were not simply hearing a tale. They were receiving their identity. Every generation added a new chapter, not by writing it down, but by living it and then speaking it forward. This was history in motion, alive in the minds and mouths of every person who understood the value of remembering. Imagine for a moment a world where every lesson must be memorized. Every piece of knowledge carried in the mind with no backup, no written records, no printed safety net to fall on. That requires discipline, that requires a level of personal responsibility that many people today cannot even imagine. Yet Africans did it. They did it for centuries. They developed a system of memory so strong that entire genealogies, wars, migrations, philosophies, moral codes, and spiritual insights were preserved with astonishing accuracy. They built a living library not with stone and shelves, but with people. The storytellers, often called Griots in West Africa, were more than entertainers. They were historians, counselors, advisors, and guardians of culture. A griot could stand in front of a king and recite the lineage of his ancestors going back hundreds of years, recite every battle fought under his bloodline, every oath taken, every land conquered or lost. Think about that, a walking archive, a living record, a human encyclopedia. And this was not an accident. It was intentional. Africans understood that knowledge was a weapon, a shield, a foundation, and the people who held it were respected because they held the community together. Yet this legacy teaches us something deeper, something about human potential. Because if an entire civilization could memorize its history without a single book, what does that say about the power hidden inside every human mind? What does it say about the ability of people to rise above limitations and create systems of excellence, even when resources are scarce? It shows us that greatness is not determined by what tools you have, but by how you use the tools within you. Africans mastered memory, discipline, and communication. They mastered the art of turning sound into history. In those days, storytelling was not passive. It was active, powerful, theatrical. A story was performed, not simply told. The storyteller used body language, rhythm, melody, and emotion to make the listener feel the story, not just hear it. This made the knowledge unforgettable. A child who grew up listening to these stories carried them in their heart for life because the stories were woven into every part of their world. They heard them at gatherings, ceremonies, celebrations, and rites of passage. The spoken word shaped their values, their courage, their sense of purpose. And there is something incredibly motivating about this. Africa's storytelling tradition is a reminder that excuses do not build legacy, effort does. It shows us that limitations should never stop you from rising. When the world denied Africans access to books, they built their own system of knowledge. When others relied on paper, Africa relied on memory. When others depended on ink, Africa depended on truth. And that truth survived colonization, displacement, war, and attempts to erase culture. That truth still stands today stronger than ever. It also shows us that communication is one of the most powerful tools a human being can possess. In the modern world, many people underestimate the power of their own voice. They scroll, they type, they stay silent, they hold back. But your voice, when used with purpose, can move nations. It can change families, it can heal wounds, and it can carry your dreams into reality. Africans learned long ago that words create destiny. They knew that with enough clarity, enough passion, enough discipline, a spoken message could outlive the person who said it. There is a lesson here for anyone seeking to grow, to develop, or to find direction. Your life will be shaped by the stories you tell yourself and the stories you pass on. If you speak fear, you will live in fear. If you speak doubt, you will act in doubt. But if you speak purpose, strength, and truth, then you begin to build a foundation that cannot be shaken. This is why storytelling was so important in Africa. Stories were not entertainment, they were instructions for life. They taught children how to behave, how to lead, how to survive, and how to dream. And think about how this applies to your own journey. You may not be a griot or a keeper of ancient memory, but you are the storyteller of your own life. Every day you speak something into your future. Every word you choose is shaping your identity, building your confidence, or weakening your potential. The African tradition teaches us to be intentional with our speech. It teaches us that words are not meaningless. They are a form of power. They can inspire generations or destroy opportunities. The choice belongs to the speaker. This storytelling language also reminds us of the importance of community. African storytellers were not isolated. Their words were meant to uplift their people. They spoke so that the young would be strong, the elders respected, and the community united. Today, many people forget the value of speaking life into those around them. But a community that speaks encouragement to each other becomes unstoppable. A family that shares wisdom through conversations becomes unbreakable. A person who spreads knowledge through speech becomes unforgettable. The storytellers understood that their voice belonged not only to themselves, but to everyone who depended on their wisdom. And if we look deeper, we see that Africa's oral tradition was an act of resistance. When foreign powers tried to erase African identity, the stories kept it alive. When people were separated from their homeland, the stories traveled with them. They crossed deserts, oceans, and borders. They survived chains, hardships, and separation, because stories live where no one can steal them inside the mind. You can lose your land, you can lose your possessions, but you cannot lose knowledge if it is written inside you. That is the genius of Africa's oral tradition. It protected identity in ways books could not. And this is a challenge for you today. What are you carrying inside you? What wisdom, what discipline, what courage are you committing to memory? What story will you pass on? What legacy will your voice leave behind? You may not think your experience matters, but every person who has lived, learned, struggled, and grown holds a story that someone else desperately needs. Your voice might be the light someone needs to hear. Your story might be the survival guide someone else has been waiting for. So let the African tradition inspire you to speak boldly, speak with purpose, speak with truth. Let your words carry weight. Let them lift others. Let them honor the past and shape the future. Because the power of your voice is greater than any limitation, greater than any doubt, greater than any silence that tries to hold you back. Africa preserved history without books, and you can build a destiny without excuse. The storytelling language was more than communication. It was proof that greatness begins with the courage to speak, the commitment to remember, and the discipline to share knowledge that will outlive you. That is how civilizations survive. That is how identities remain unbroken. And that is how every one of us can create meaning in a world that often forgets where it came from. Use your voice wisely, build your story intentionally, and remember that the legacy of your words has the power to echo far beyond your lifetime. Just like the storytellers of Africa who carried a continent's memory not in their hands, but in their heart. Your voice is more than sound, more than words, more than the air that leaves your lungs. It is the most personal form of power you possess. The one thing no one can duplicate or replace. Your voice is shaped by every experience you have lived through, every moment that tested you, every lesson that strengthened you. It carries your history in ways you may not even realize. When you speak, you reveal the journey that shaped your character. You reveal the wisdom you gained through struggle, the confidence built through resilience, and the dreams that push you forward. Your voice becomes a reflection of everything you are and everything you aspire to be. This is why in many African traditions, a person's voice was not just a tool, it was their identity, their signature, their fingerprint on the world. They believed that when someone spoke their truth with courage, the world could feel their presence long after the sound faded. Your voice introduces you before you even explain who you are. Some people speak softly but carry depth. Others speak boldly and shake the ground beneath them. But what matters most is not volume, it is conviction. Conviction is the difference between speaking and being heard. When you speak with conviction, people feel what you say because they sense you believe it. They sense that your words come from a place of authenticity. And authenticity is rare in this world. Too many people silence their own voice because they fear judgment, criticism, or rejection. Yet every time you silence yourself, you erase part of your identity. Every time you hold back your truth, you shrink your potential. The African oral tradition teaches us that a voice unused is a story forgotten, and the world loses something valuable every time a person chooses silence over expression. Your voice carries your dreams as well. Before any dream becomes real, it is spoken, sometimes quietly to yourself, sometimes boldly to others. When you say your goals out loud, when you declare what you want from life, you make your intentions solid. You take something invisible and give it form. You turn possibility into direction. In African communities, people spoke their aspirations with hope because they understood that a spoken word carries energy. It becomes a commitment. It becomes a promise, and promises spoken with sincerity have the power to shape destiny. Your dream becomes more than an idea when you attach your voice to it. Your voice becomes the bridge between who you are today and who you are becoming. This is why you must learn to speak with clarity. Clarity removes confusion. It sharpens your message. When your message is sharp, people understand you, respect you, and support you. Clarity also protects you from being misunderstood or misrepresented. Africans valued clarity because their history depended on it. A single inaccurate word in a story could distort an entire lineage. So precision became a discipline. Every storyteller learned to choose words carefully, not because of fear, but because of respect for truth. And you can apply the same principle in your life. When you speak clearly about your needs, your boundaries, your goals, and your identity, you build a foundation that cannot be shaken. Courage also plays a role. People often underestimate how much courage it takes to speak honestly in a world full of noise. It takes courage to say what you believe, to defend your values, to stand firm when your truth is unpopular, and to express feelings that make you vulnerable. But courage grows each time you use your voice instead of hiding it. Many African storytellers were not only historians, they were guardians of truth. They preserved the identity of their people through times of war, oppression, and uncertainty. They spoke even when speaking was risky. Their courage ensured that future generations would know where they came from. And you have the same responsibility in your own life, to speak even when it feels uncomfortable, to express yourself even when fear tells you to stay quiet. Your voice is also the way you shape your environment. Every relationship you build, every opportunity you gain, every conflict you resolve depends on communication. People don't know your value until you express it. They don't understand your abilities until you articulate them. They don't respect your boundaries unless you speak them out loud. Many people live frustrated lives not because they lack potential, but because they lack the courage to express that potential through their voice. But the moment you begin speaking with confidence, people start listening. They begin responding differently. Doors begin to open. Your world shifts because your expression shifts. Your external life aligns with your internal truth. Your voice is your identity because it carries the essence of who you are. It is the instrument through which you share your emotions, your ideas, your strengths, and your vision. It connects you to others. It allows you to influence and inspire. It gives you the power to correct injustice, to encourage someone who is struggling, to share wisdom that can transform a life. And when you use your voice with purpose, you leave a mark. People remember how you made them feel, how you motivated them, how you lifted them with your words. African oral traditions thrive because voices were used responsibly to guide, to protect, to uplift. Your voice has the same potential if you choose to use it. So ask yourself, What story is your voice telling? Are you speaking from fear or strength? Are you expressing your truth or suppressing it? Are your words pushing your life forward or holding you back? You have the power to rewrite your identity through speech. You have the ability to choose words that reflect your growth, your wisdom, your dignity. Every conversation is a chance to reinforce who you are. Every day is a chance to use your voice to declare your vision. And the more you speak with purpose, the more your identity becomes unshakable. Your voice is not just part of you, it is proof of you. It is the sound of your existence echoing through the world. It is a tool that can open paths, build relationships, protect your legacy, and empower others. No matter where you come from, no matter what you have faced, your voice can rise above your struggles and announce your strength. Use it boldly, use it wisely, and use it with the understanding that your identity lives in the sound of your truth. Knowledge is often described as something you store on shelves, something printed, bound, and preserved in paper. But long before the world depended on books, long before words were pressed into pages, knowledge lived in people. It lived in the minds of elders, in the memories of parents, in the voices of storytellers, and in the daily experiences of entire communities. The African tradition of oral wisdom proves that true understanding does not begin with written words. It begins with lived reality. It begins with observation, with listening, with trial and error, and with the ability to pass on what you have learned in a way that others can use. Books can store information, but people carry wisdom that has been shaped by life itself. And there is a difference, an important difference between information and wisdom. When you look at your own life, you may not realize it, but you are walking around with years of knowledge inside you. Every obstacle you have faced has taught you something. Every mistake has shaped your judgment. Every success has sharpened your confidence. Every relationship has taught you something about human behavior. Every moment of pain has revealed something about endurance. But because this knowledge isn't written down, many people underestimate its value. They look to formal education and forget that the greatest lessons often come from living, not studying. African storytellers understood this clearly. They knew that a person who lived and paid attention was often wiser than someone who simply read without experience. They believed that the human mind was the greatest library ever created. This kind of wisdom was not collected quietly. It was shared. It was spoken, performed, and passed down. In villages and communities across Africa, elders would gather young people around them and tell stories not to entertain but to teach. These stories carried lessons about bravery, honesty, leadership, discipline, and survival. They taught people how to navigate conflict, how to make good decisions, how to respect ancestors, and how to honor community values. No book could capture the emotion or the meaning the way a storyteller could. A storyteller used voice, rhythm, pauses, and memory to bring wisdom to life. And because it was alive, because it was spoken, it stayed in the hearts and minds of everyone who heard it. This teaches us something powerful about the mind. It teaches us that the human brain can store incredible amounts of memory when we engage fully with the world around us. When Africans remembered histories, genealogies, and life lessons without writing them down, they were proving what all humans are capable of when they train the mind to listen, interpret, and remember. Modern distractions make people forget how powerful their minds truly are. But if an entire civilization could preserve centuries of history through memory alone, imagine what you can preserve. Imagine what you can learn. Imagine what you can create when you decide to take your own mind seriously. Your life itself is a library because every day adds a new page of understanding. You may not see it as a formal record, but your experiences have taught you things no textbook could teach. You know how it feels to lose something important. You know how it feels to get back up after disappointment. You know how it feels to struggle for something that mattered. You know how it feels to adjust when life hits you unexpectedly. Those insights are not small. They are priceless, and they become even more valuable when you choose to share them with others. Someone out there is walking through a problem you have already solved. Someone is experiencing a pain you have lived through. Someone is confused by something that you now understand deeply because life taught it to you directly. You may not realize it, but your knowledge could be the answer someone else needs. There is also a deeper truth. Knowledge becomes more powerful when it is connected to humanity. Books can teach facts, but people teach perspective. Books can explain events, but people explain meaning. Books can describe emotions, but people make you feel them. Human connection gives life to knowledge. That's why the African oral tradition was so strong. It relied not just on information, but on relationship. When elders taught the younger ones, it wasn't a transaction, it was a bond. It created unity, belonging, and continuity. It made people feel rooted in something bigger than themselves. It reminded them that identity is not found in isolation, but in shared stories and shared wisdom. In your own life, you must recognize the same truth. Knowledge becomes more valuable when you share it. Too many people hide their experiences, either because they think no one will care, or because they think their lessons are not important enough. But wisdom that stays locked inside you helps no one, not even yourself. When you talk about what you have learned, you reinforce it, you deepen it, you make it clearer, and you inspire others to pay attention to their own experiences. Sharing knowledge builds communities, strengthens families, improves relationships, and shapes future generations. The African Griots did not keep their wisdom to themselves. They used it to guide entire cultures, and you can guide others in your own way, even if your audience is just one person who needs direction. You also learn more from people than you ever will from books alone. Books are incredible tools. They expand your world and open new doors. But the conversations you have with others, the stories they share, the lessons they learned, the emotions they carry, those things shape your understanding in a deeper way. You grow not just by reading, but by living among people who think differently, feel differently, and see the world from angles you haven't explored. When Africans shared knowledge through speech, they were also creating a shared consciousness. They ensured that no one learned in isolation. Everyone was part of the same evolving story. And this is where the message becomes personal. You must value what you know, even if the world does not applaud it. Many people think knowledge only matters if it comes with a certificate or a degree. But wisdom often comes from adversity, not from awards. It comes from surviving storms, not from collecting recognition. It comes from paying attention, not from passing exams. What you have learned through your life has a place, a purpose, and a power. And when you embrace it, you become a source of strength for others. Your knowledge lives in you even when no one sees it. It sits quietly in your decisions, your instincts, your judgment, your confidence. It shows itself in how you communicate, how you solve problems, and how you face challenges. You may not always speak it out loud, but it is always working. And the more you honor it, the more it grows. When you look at yourself as a living library, you begin to carry yourself differently. You realize that you matter not because of what you own or what you display, but because of what you know and who you have become. Knowledge that lives in people is stronger than any written record, because it cannot be burned, lost, or erased. It survives inside memory, inside experience, inside culture. It travels through speech. It moves through generations. And this truth should empower you to keep learning, keep observing, keep growing, and keep sharing. Your experiences were not given to you randomly. They were shaping your mind into a reservoir of understanding that someone else needs. You are more valuable than you realize. You carry more wisdom than you admit. You are holding knowledge that deserves to be spoken, honored, and passed on. Your story is one of the most powerful things you possess. Even if you don't always recognize it, every moment you have lived, every challenge you have faced, every choice you have made has shaped you in ways that go far beyond the present. Your story is not just a collection of events, it is a living force that continues to move, breathe, and influence long after the moments themselves have passed. Many people underestimate their own story because they think only famous people or historical figures leave a legacy. But the truth is that the world is shaped just as deeply by everyday lives, by people who lived with courage, who endured hardship, who learned from their failures, and who continued moving forward even when the path was not clear. Your story carries a power that does not depend on recognition. It depends on truth, experience, and humanity. When you look back on your life, you may see moments that broke you, moments that confused you, or moments that felt too heavy to carry. But each of those experiences gave you a lesson that can outlive you. They taught you how to survive, how to grow, and how to keep going when everything seemed uncertain. These lessons become part of your identity, and your identity becomes part of the message you leave behind. In many African traditions, griots preserved entire histories without writing anything down. They used stories to keep people connected to their roots, their culture, and their purpose. They showed that stories do not die as long as they are spoken, shared, and remembered. And in the same way, your personal story has the potential to live far beyond your lifetime. There are parts of your life that someone else will need one day. The wisdom you gain from pain can become someone else's strength. The insight you earn through struggle can become someone else's. The resilience you developed while facing challenges can become someone else's motivation to rise. The moments you once viewed as your lowest points may one day be the exact story that lifts someone else out of their darkness. That is the incredible power of human experience. What once felt like suffering can transform into guidance for others. When you tell your story honestly, you turn your wounds into wisdom and your experiences into light that someone else can follow. This is why you must never underestimate what you have lived through. Many people silence their stories because they think they're not unique, not special, or not important enough to share. But every story has a purpose because every life has meaning. The details of your experiences may be different from someone else's, but the emotions, the lessons, and the humanity behind those experiences are universal. People learn through connection. They heal through hearing something that mirrors their own feeling. They find courage when someone else admits they were once afraid. They find hope when someone else explains how they overcame despair. You never truly know how many lives your story can touch because you never know who needs to hear it. Your story becomes even more powerful when you speak with intention. Words carry energy, and when you speak your truth clearly and confidently, it resonates deeply with others. Africans use storytelling not just to entertain, but to educate, protect, and preserve. They spoke with purpose because they understood that a story could teach more than a lecture, guide more than a rule, and inspire more than instructions. Your story works the same way. When you share it with purpose, to encourage, to teach, to guide, you turn your life into a message. You create a legacy that moves through time, carried by those who heard you, those who were inspired by you, and those who were changed by what you shared. It is also important to remember that your story does not have to be perfect to be powerful. Some people hide their story because they feel ashamed of their mistakes or embarrassed by their past. But mistakes are part of being human, and imperfections make your story real. People are not inspired by perfection, they are inspired by authenticity. They connect with honesty. They relate to vulnerability. When you share your truth, the good, the bad, the painful, the hopeful, you create space for others to be honest too. You help them feel less alone in their struggles. You show them that growth is possible, healing is possible, and transformation is real. Your truth becomes a bridge that connects you to others in a meaningful way. Think about how many stories from the past continue to influence the world today. Stories of bravery, sacrifice, survival, creativity, resilience, and wisdom. These stories didn't survive because someone wrote them down. They survived because someone preserved them, someone repeated them, someone valued them. Now imagine your own story being carried forward in the same way, not through books or monuments, but through the people you touched, the hearts you impacted, the lives you influenced. Your story can outlive you every time someone remembers your words, your actions, your lessons, or your kindness. Even in your everyday life, you are already leaving a legacy through your interactions. Every time you encourage someone, you add to your story. Every time you help someone through a difficult moment, you add to your story. Every time you choose perseverance over giving up, you add to your story. Every time you share something you learned from your own struggles, you add to your story. And each of those contributions can echo far beyond you because the people you influence will carry those lessons forward. They may pass them to their children, their friends, or someone else who needs strength. In that way, your story moves like a ripple, starting small but spreading wider and wider over time. Your story also continues through example. People often learn more from what you do than what you say. The way you handle adversity, the way you treat others, the way you stay committed to your values, these things create an invisible legacy. Someone may remember your actions long after they forget your work. Someone may adopt your habits, your attitude, or your determination simply because they witnessed it in you. Your life becomes a model that others follow, and that model continues even after you are gone. Influence is not always loud. Sometimes it works quietly, shaping the future in ways you never expected. You must understand the magnitude of your story because it shapes the way you live now. When you realize that your story has the power to outlive you, you begin to speak differently, act differently, and think differently. You become more intentional with your choices because you understand they leave a mark. You become more generous with your wisdom because you know someone else may need it. You become more fearless in expressing yourself because you know your truth can open doors for others. You stop treating your life like a series of random events and start seeing it as a message that is still being written. Your story is bigger than you because it does not end with you. It continues in the people you uplift, in the minds you influence, in the voices you encourage, and in the lessons you leave behind. Every moment you live becomes part of a legacy that someone else can one day draw strength from. That is why you must honor your journey, speak your truth, and embrace your experiences. Your story is alive, powerful, and meaningful. And when you share it with purpose, it becomes something timeless, something that echoes beyond your lifetime and continues shaping the world long after you are gone.